Welcome back to the Lift Free and Diet Hard podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Coates. Join me along with industry leaders and friends on a quest to get more people through the gym door and eating and living healthier. Join me where evidence meets empathy while rejecting fitness industry fads and extremism. Let's begin. Welcome back, Jason Brown, my friend. Masters of Exercise Science, PhD studies in progress, CSCS, author. You've got a big YouTube channel. You and I were part of the same cohort of longtime T-Nation writers. But I'll preface this episode. I had a special reason to bring you back, and I want to set it up. So you posted a longer YouTube video, it was probably a couple months ago now, talking about some recent health issues and a major pivot in the way that the stuff that you're working on. So I wanted to dig into that, but it's great to have you back.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. As always, you do so much for this industry, and I'm sure there are literally thousands of people that appreciate what you do. So thank you for being just a beacon of authority and authenticity, and again, just you do so much. So I appreciate you, man. I really do.
Thank you. Let's make this one about you. So again, more setup. Over the last couple of years, from my view, I've seen you gaining a lot of attention in the industry. And meanwhile, you will talk about, and we'll get in there, about your frustrations about social media growth, about YouTube growth. And, I've seen you lots of presenting, especially workshops at Luca. And I'm going to come back to Luca. I was just with him this weekend at Supercoach. And you guys did a day together at CanFit Pro. And I know he's had you over at Vigor. And you released this course. I'm halfway through it. I've been so busy, I just pick it away at your functional conjugate course. You published a book, which is just completely nuts. And meanwhile, you've been open about your struggles with, you feel like you're not gaining traction, right, with everything, which sounds nuts because I'm looking at you going, wow. And I don't get envious of anybody, but like what Jason has been doing is so incredible. And yet you've been so hard on yourself. And this is the crux of all this stuff. What was the narrative in your mind about what you're supposed to be doing with your career in the eyes of the fitness industry? Let's start there.
Wow, that's a good question. I think for me, there's been a lot of changes just with myself spiritually in the last couple of years. And I don't think, obviously, being in the fitness industry, being someone that talks about deeper science as it relates to strength training and conditioning, obviously there's not as much room to talk about other things, right? Like, how are you fulfilled? What is your why? And I think that's kind of a place that I got to over the last couple of years of wondering, what is it that truly lights me up? And I think, Andrew, there's in business, and I think that this can be said probably for most businesses, that just because you can do something, does that mean you do it? And that's the question I've had. I've done a lot of things to do things. I've done a lot of short-term things. And it has felt more like I am trying to just spread myself across just multiple things. And you and I both know that educating coaches, trainers, and helping people with their training is two very different things. And I found myself a few years ago wondering, when I was recording a podcast, I don't even know how long ago, it was probably 4 years ago, 5 years ago. And I remember being on that recording and thinking to myself, who am I talking to? I had that question, that kind of epiphany, like, who am I talking to? And I just found myself going back and forth between talking to trainers and talking to the end user that just wants to look good, feel good. Mm. And that to me was just like kind of a turning point where I started to reevaluate, who am I talking to, right? Like, if you don't know who you're talking to, I mean, this is social media 101, right? Like, you don't know who you're talking to, you're talking into the void. You're talking maybe to someone that you don't necessarily want to talk to, nor do you have the ability to actually help. So that was, I think, kind of a jump off point. But this is a tough one because I don't necessarily. I'm like someone that likes to have answers for things. That's why I like going deep in all of the science related to training. But I found myself not having answers to these questions, and um, that's tough when you are a type A person that requires answers all the time. I found myself not having answers and generally just not feeling happy.
Hmm.
And I I don't think I was honest with myself like a lot of the time where I would launch various things. I actually it's funny, before I we launched the current certification, which you mentioned, um, I was pretty much intent on turning off education. But the thing that was the catalyst for that was Joel Jameson reaching out and saying, "Hey, you should do this course, and you've got the credibility, and it could be very successful." So I kind of said, "All right, well, maybe this is like the answer I'm looking for. Someone else to say, 'Hey, you should do this thing.'" And I think, Andrew, a lot of the same like lessons in my life have really been the same lesson repeatedly. And I don't know, whoever's listening to this, maybe you can recount times where you've had the same lesson over and over and over, and you continuously still make the wrong decision. I'm 43 years old, and I find myself like I'm still not looking out for myself. And that's kind of, I guess, in a nutshell. This is certainly a harder conversation. You're like, hey Jay, what is the best advice to someone that wants to look good and feel good? Oh, that's easy, right? But
Hmm.
this is a lot harder. It's a lot more layers, and I think for me, when I was faced with some of these challenges with my own health, that is kind of the thing that like blew me out of the bunker, so to speak. Like my wife always jokes, she's like, "You will not change unless someone like blows you out of the bunker." Like you will go with it. You will keep going and keep going and keep going and just never die, never quit until there is a life-changing thing that forces you to kind of go a different direction. And that, I think, we are served these lessons, or we have these things happen. And in the moment that these things happen, oftentimes we just assess them at face value. Well, this sucks. I've got this health issue. Why do I have this? Why am I struggling with this? I'm a young, healthy guy. I do all the right things. However, there is always a bigger why, and I don't believe in coincidence. So I think that is kind of what has brought me to this point that I'm at today.
All right. I think there's a lot more. So I'm going to share a bit of my own experience because I see aspects of my own journey and narratives in some of the stuff that has played out for you. So, yeah, I'll get a bit vulnerable here. Everything you said about the direction between serving the end user. So, this podcast, while this episode will probably seem almost a bit more coach and fitness career eccentric, I believe there's stuff here for everybody, and I want to make sure we get there. A lot of coaches listening. But for the first, God, what was it, 320-ish episodes, this was geared towards fitness professionals where I don't actually sell anything meaningful to fitness professionals. It was a passion project. Now, it also chronicles the rise of my career from literally not having any sort of social media following, uh, at just right even at the start of where I was writing to obviously, things over 8 years later. It's been dramatic, and that's actually been very valuable. And all the connections and relationships with coaches that I built through this has been wonderful. But I decided, okay, I need to gear this more towards a broader general audience, and I hope a lot of the listeners, fall under that umbrella. Great. And I suspect you felt the same. And this is where I'll come back to Luca because I'll sort of jokingly blame him for this. The man is inhuman capacity for work and energy and just being in his orbit. There's a magnetism, right? We were talking about this weekend at his Supercoach event. And I think with you, Luca he got excited and loved what you were doing. He loves geeking out over programming. So he's grabbing you going, hey, let's come up to Vigor, let's do this event and whatever. And I'm assuming that there's this pressure to, wow, okay, this is pulling me in a certain direction. And I suspect there's also this desire, because I feel it too. We do enjoy being respected as authorities in the fitness industry. We do. I think a lot of coaches crave it, a lot of people like it. And through my own experience, I've done a lot of public speaking gigs, a lot of presentations, and I'll be speaking at the NSCA May 2nd, Calgary, and it's going to be on training with injured limbs. This stuff is going to be very good for coaches, very tactical, very evidence-based. But I also have done too many presentations on social media of all bloody things. And I don't want to be known as a social media guy. I've done well with it, but I've actually like stepped
Mhm.
away. I just don't want to mess with that crap. I don't want to get pigeonholed there. And I can see that there's coaches like you doing stuff that's really educational for the training and tactical stuff. You're pursuing a PhD. And I'm going, yeah, I feel the pull of being seen and respected more as a coach authority. And so I was working on, and I still, who knows what I'll do, a course seminar for coaches. And actually, my presentation as super coach actually was a very entry level version of this. But late in this fall, and I think I've mentioned on air before, but I apologize to everybody if I haven't. I was diagnosed with low thyroid, and then it was confirmed that I have Hashimoto's. And so my energy levels also had been really rough over the last couple of years, uh, sort of getting worse towards later in last year. And I still have my ups and downs. I also think, oh, I'm getting a little bit older. I just turned 48. I carry a very heavy workload between the podcast and coaching full time in person, which most people in
Mhm.
our space don't do anymore. Online stuff, I'm trying to write presentations for different events, etc. Way more demand than for our time. And but I still felt this pull. And it's funny because I see you and I'm going, wow, I would really enjoy getting to do what Jason's doing. Meanwhile, it's creating conflict for you. So this is why I want to have this conversation. Does that sound
Mhm.
crazy? Because I'm sure there's a lot of
Yeah.
coaches going, look at Jason's trajectory. He is rocketing through the industry. And
Mhm.
here's Jason going, I'm not happy. I'm not fulfilled. And obviously took on a bit too much. So I'll bounce back to you through everything I just shared. Is there anything in there that, am I on the mark?
Yeah, I think, wow, this is this is definitely a deeper one for me. Because none of this is super straightforward. But I do think that as coaches, or at least what I tend to see, is that we get caught up in what we can do. And a business coach I know, Will Schiller, you may or may not have know him. He's actually a
Mhm.
Canadian guy.
Mhm.
He he said something very profound to me a few years ago, and he says, "You can't be everything to everyone." And I find myself I mean, just kind of my life as a whole being more of a people pleaser and needing to do a lot of different things and not having the ability. I mean, there's so many things I've never, would have thought of saying no to. You've referenced the book early on. That was probably a thing I should have said no to, but I didn't. And, I wouldn't say I regret doing that. I certainly don't. But, there are certain things that we take on ourselves that maybe we shouldn't. And maybe we put ourselves in a disadvantageous position because of that. So I think, at the end of this, I've not trusted myself. And back in my 20s, when I was in the military, I had an instructor, and he said, Brown, you're a great soldier, but you second guess yourself. And I remember that moment. He said that to me. And at the time, I don't think I really knew what he meant. But fast forward to present day, I think that that's the thing that I've struggled with the most is second guessing myself, not being decisive, not sticking to one thing. Social media is a good example because social media is like you could try a million things and none of them gain any traction with. And obviously our measurement of traction on social media is how many people engage with it, with the reach. And if you're looking at it on a deeper level, you're probably even thinking about how many people are opting into your email list, all of this stuff. And I find myself kind of just at a standstill where we used to write articles for T Nation and they meant something. Now it feels almost like the stuff that you do on social media, unless it checks a certain box, it is kind of meaningless, which I think is probably another piece that's, I know a lot of coaches are struggling on social media because it is, again, one of those things that is a unique skill set. I have the ability to I can write a 3,000 word article. What I can't do is write 10 hooks that are going to reach new people that are the right people for me to reach. And that to me is ultra frustrating too. So, I'm kind of all over the place with what I'm saying right now, but I think at the core of this, it is, leaning into the one thing that you excel at. I don't excel at social media, but what I do excel at is writing programs. What I do excel at is helping people manage their life, manage stress in their life, with their training, adding quality to their life and not taking away from, their quality of life outside of the gym. That's where I excel. Now, teaching coaches how to write programs, it's just really not something that has ever lit me up. And I find myself asking myself during those moments when I am educating coaches is I don't really get lit up doing this. Why am I doing it? I'm doing it, if I'm being honest, I was doing it really just for the money. It was a major leg of my business. And I am someone that maybe if I only cared about that and I was willing to put my morals to the side, then I could do those things. But for me, I just can't do things that I'm not lit up to do. And I find myself just kind of faking it. Um, and that's problematic. I think fundamentally you start getting to these places where you have health issues. All of a sudden you have health issues. You're like, oh, where did this come from? Well, it came from doing things that are not in alignment for so long, and then wondering, hey, why am I doing this in the first place? It's just for money. I mean, it's great seeing coaches have breakthroughs and write better programs, but it's just really not the thing that lights me up. So again, I can do it, but does that mean I should do it is the question.
Do you regret having built the course?
No, I don't regret anything because I do think that all of these things that we do are they're the things that we're supposed to do. Like maybe I wouldn't have this turning point or this like kind of epiphany if I didn't do these things. Maybe I'm talking to you right now. If I hadn't done these things, maybe I'm still doing the same thing and I'm still just kind of going against the grain, if you will. So I do think that nothing is by accident. I think it is by design that we do these things. So I don't regret doing anything I've done. And many of these things have served important purposes for me throughout my growth as an individual.
A quick break from this episode to shout out RP Strength and the RP Hypertrophy app. I have a big confession. I've never used a coach before. I've always auto-regulated my training for decades. But I've known Dr. Mike Isertel and Nick Shaw, the founders of RP, for years. I'll get behind anything they create, including years of reading their books, consuming their media, attending their seminars, and having them as guests on the show. And I've been using the RP Hypertrophy app now for several months. And several things have happened. It forced me to make smaller and more gradual but better increases in weight volume across time, like putting 5-pound plates on each side of a leg press. Like, who does that? Never before. Only 45s. It cut out the jump volume. It made my workouts faster and more efficient. I show up with a plan. I didn't have to think about what to do. I feel more accountable having a lot of my progress. And I don't skip things because I don't feel like it. If hiring a one-on-one coach isn't for you, using the RP Hypertrophy app is the next best thing to manage your gains and to take the guesswork out of your program. There's a 30-day money-back guarantee, so you can try it risk-free, and if you don't like it, they'll give you your money back. And I've also got you a $50 US dollar discount, so go to rpstrength.com/coats and use the code COATSRP, or go to the link below in the show notes. That's rpstrength.com/coats and use the code COATSRP.
Was a major issue that you'd overcommitted on time to juggle too many things, or was it there's this ball of stress living in the back of your mind, this constant state of unease with, because for me, sure, there's the idea generation of the course I may still do because I still think there's a lot of good stuff in there. And I'm not necessarily convinced it's going to be like this monstrous payday, but I think it'll be good for coaches. So there's the narratives there, right? But the idea generation process, when you're attuned to it, is very easy. Make tons and tons of notes and put it on paper. But then the idea of the hours and what it would take to organize it, put it together is a little overwhelming. But you know what? Most coaches will not admit to the people listening. Because right now, so side note, but relevant, as of the time of recording, and it'll be released in time, I'm currently doing an intake on my online women's strength program. I do 4-year, they're quarterly. They've done quite well in the grand scheme of things. And every round is the round for the last several. I've got several clients who laugh at me because we've gone through this where I'm like worried, this is the one that falls off the cliff. This is the one that doesn't do well. And
Mhm.
the lead into it, I feel a lot of stress. And of course, every time it does fine. Now, if you're listening, you're actually interested in joining, yes, registration's open. I would love to have you. Like it's been popular. But every time the lead up, because there's a whole bunch of work to build it, and I stress it. And
Mhm.
so I'm seeing you, and I've heard you say things about like the lead into promoting your course, how much time
Mhm.
that takes. So back to the original question, because this is long-winded.
Mhm.
A, is it an overcommitment of time and your ability to just do all the things, or is it that looming stress that hangs in there constantly, or is it both?
So for me, it's not time. I have like building a course for me, that course you reference is about a little over 10 hours of video.
Hmm.
The building of it, the ideas, that is the easiest part for me.
Hmm.
The shooting the videos, easy. I could do that stuff with my eyes closed. Now, on the other end, everything else that comes with it that you mentioned, the launch of it, the getting people on a VIP list, the sales tactics, um, the amount of energy that goes into things that I am not as skilled with, that take me a lot more takes and a lot more thinking. Those are the parts for me that are stressful. Launches for me are very, very stressful. That particular course had a very, very successful launch. However, to like do that over and over for me is very hard. I don't have the energy. And then I think too, this is the key element is that the energy up here. Now, physically, the energy is no problem. That's easy for me. But the mental energy you expend doing anything that involves a launch, a marketing strategy, an email. I mean, there's a lot of behind the scenes things that have to take place. That is the part that does drain a lot of energy from people that are doing these things. And I'm a small business. I operate this business with myself and my wife, and we have got, a small team of independent contractors, but we find ourselves being torn between two worlds. And the world that I want to grow is my training subscriptions, my programs. That's the part of it that takes a back seat when you're trying to do a business to business offer as well as a business to consumer offer. They're two different languages, they're two different avatars, they're two different, marketing wise, it's a completely different thing. You're dealing with people that have very different pain points. A trainer has a pain point of needing clients, wanting to keep clients, obviously getting them results long term. How do I get them results? Whereas someone that's just training has the pain point of how much volume do I do? What type of training split do I use? How much is enough? Those are the types of questions. So again, it's like two polar opposites, very different worlds. And when you're pulled between both, how do you focus on growing to any level? Like if you're trying to really get to the top level of anything, if you're doing two different things, it's going to be tricky to do that unless you have a massive budget and a massive team and all the things that would potentially go with that. But I think that, in the online space, having one offer for one person is the best possible direction. And honestly, I've never done that. My trajectory through online fitness has been very different because of things that we've done, like writing articles on T Nation. A lot of the articles have allowed me to scale my low ticket, my training subscription, which is, again, if there was a coach right now, like, hey, what advice would you give to me to start online training? It wouldn't be doing low ticket. Low ticket is very hard to scale. It requires a lot of trust, a lot of upfront work, which you can't replace with a social media post. You have to do the years of work that it takes to do that. So it just becomes this push and pull between two different things that time wise aren't super hard for me, but mental bandwidth, that's where things get challenging.
So let's go to the health stuff because you've more or less said in numerous places that the stress from all this you believe contributed to your health stuff, cardiac issues. Is
Yes,
that true?
I do believe that. Yeah, and I think so many people are living in fight or flight, low grade fight or flight, and being in balance as far as your autonomic nervous system, fight or flight versus parasympathetic. So sympathetic versus parasympathetic is something that a lot of people are struggling with, and I see it wreak havoc on a lot of systems in the human body. For me, I think, maybe this is my Achilles heel, things that show up electrically in my heart, which influences rhythm. And of course, if you have more instability in those tissues, and if you're someone like me, I'm someone that burns through electrolytes. And for anyone that doesn't know, the heart is very much an electrical organ. It relies on having the correct amount of electrolytes to
Mhm.
stay in sinus rhythm. And the first thing I notice, and this has been something I've dealt with before I actually knew what any of this stuff was. I had been dealing with this before, even when I was very young. Um, so we're all prone to different things, right? And that's how biology works. We're all different organisms, so we respond differently. And for me, there's a variety of things here. We could spend the whole time talking about cardiac physiology, which I love geeking out on. But I think at the core of this, it comes down to what's going on up here. How is this connect? What is the coherence like between your brain and your heart? And if you're out of alignment, then other things happen. If you're stressed about a variety of things and you're trying to manage a lot of things, then is the ability to go through electrolytes higher? In my case, it seems to be plausible that that is happening. I know from one of the things that had a big effect for me was supplementing high doses of sea salt, magnesium, and potassium. I was going from a point of having basically like extra beats. The actual name is premature ventricular contraction. So you have a lot of different types of arrhythmias. And if you do an EKG, also known as an ECG, you can understand what type of ectopic you're having. I was having PVCs, which are a little bit different origin than, say, a PAC, a premature atrial contraction.
Hmm.
So again, not to get too deep in the cardiac physiology, it's really, really cool stuff. And interestingly enough, I was going through an exercise cardiac physiology class in my PhD at the time. So I was learning how to read ECG strips. I was learning a lot about, different aspects of the heart, preload, afterload, contractility, all of these things, how they work, and how that can potentially change when you're under stress. And a lot of the symptoms I was experiencing were kind of lining up with some of the things that I was learning, which was really cool. What I will say, and I'm doing a terrible job of actually conveying how terrifying it is. I was absolutely terrified on a daily basis. I was having a very high frequency of those extra beats that I mentioned, and I would go to bed every night wondering if I was checking out. So that loop, what does that do? It creates more stress, more uncertainty. So it's like you compound more of the same feelings that you are already experiencing. So it's this vicious cycle that I found myself in. And I, went to a cardiologist. I had an echocardiogram. I've had a stress test. I've had all of the tests done. I've wore a monitor, and structurally there's nothing. My heart is structurally in very, very good shape. But what that doesn't tell you, and even blood tests don't tell you, a lot of the levels in your tissues from a cellular level, as far as electrolytes, can be depleted. So, long story, very long. I was able to find relief by going down this rabbit hole, which I'm still in, believe it or not. It's actually been almost a year. So it was last May is when these started. And I've been on this path, and even looking at this from a musculoskeletal, I've had a lot of soreness in my pec major and serratus anterior on the left side, which for me, I didn't really connect musculoskeletal to cardiac arrhythmias. But if you look, anyone on here that listen to this, if you are interested in geeking out, you could start looking into this and see that there are vital nerves that run through the pericardium, which is the sac that the heart is held in. You have something called the phrenic nerve runs through the left ventricle. I mean, these are nerves that are very, very important. And you can even look into breathing. So there's so many different aspects to it. There's also the emotional side of doing things that you're not in alignment with. So it's such a like an onion. You just peel layers and you learn more and more and more and things. And it's funny, I have a running doc going now on my heart situation, which like honestly could be a dissertation at this point. It's probably about 25, 30 pages of just different things that I've looked into. And luckily I've been able to find a lot of answers through this rabbit hole I've been down that Western medicine wasn't able to to provide me with. So I don't even know where do we even start with that one. That was a deep one.
Well, let's go back and let's try to connect this with the listener because obviously there's a lot of your story, a little bit of my story, but I want people listening, and it may not be like, oh, it's manifesting as literal fucking heart fuckery. It's I just don't feel good, stress, overwhelm, misalignment in things, and sure, someone who doesn't work in our world, stressful job, young kids, busy life, whatever, needs to earn an income livelihood just to survive. The cost of living, increases all the time. There's all sorts of shit with that the last few years. And that person may not have the ability to go, okay, well, I can just pivot away from this one side of my career and I can lean into this other thing I'm aligned with. What do you say to that person
Oh,
on getting clear here? And fi- is it as simple? What did you wrestle with? Was it a quick and easy decision for you? Did you wrestle with this?
I'm still wrestling with it. It's not a quick and easy decision because I turned off a portion of my business that was bringing in a considerable amount of revenue to my business. We're not talking about a couple grand here. We're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars. So I did, forego a lot to do that, which then, can cause more stress if you're not. I, live a life that is very expensive. My kids go to a private school. I mean, there's a lot that we live a very healthy lifestyle, and nothing is inexpensive these days. So there's certainly some stress there. But what I would say, and this is a tough one. What advice do you give to someone that is maybe in a situation they don't want to be in? It's maybe a job they hate. They go to work every day. They hate their job. They're out of alignment. There's so many different things with that. I think at the end of the day, that's a very, very hard situation to navigate and for me to give advice on. Um, I went into online fitness back in 2015, and I owned a gym at the time, and I was doing very much like you, working 80 hours a week, coaching people, coaching classes, training people one-on-one, also building an online platform, which was a thing. It's interesting. I always refer back to my first online business, Andrew, because I did it not for money. Like I remember I was making like 1,200 bucks extra a month, and I was pumped. I'm like,
Mm,
this is so cool because I love writing programming. I was writing programming for CrossFit gyms all over. At the
mm,
time, it was only, I had a handful of CrossFit gyms I was helping, and I was helping them, and I was saving them time. I was providing my expertise to them, and that's all I really wanted. I never foresaw this taking off and putting me in a position where I could go into the online space, headlong and just focus on that. So I think the lesson to that is if the intention is pure and it is something that truly lights you up, and maybe you do it as a side, like for me, that was a side hustle that turned into, I went from making $1,200 a month to making $40,000 a month in 18 months. And the only thing I think that facilitated that was the intention. Um, the intention was pure. It was truly what I felt aligned with and what lit me up.
mm.
So it's funny when things are aligned, at least I've seen this throughout the course of my life, things are easier. Things feel easy. I don't feel stuck. I felt stuck now for a couple years, just stuck with, and in all honesty, Andrew, like, someone that's looking at what I'm doing, they might say, "Oh, you're crushing it." But what I see is something different because I haven't grown on social. I haven't, my Instagram has not grown in 2 years. I lose on a monthly basis, I lose more followers than I gain. Okay. I gain about 1,000 followers a month. I lose about 1,200 a month.
Mm.
Okay. So again, I'm going to just be real and tell you guys everything. I lose more followers every month on Instagram. My training subscription has I've lost more on my training than has grown over the last 2 years.
Mm.
Okay. So that has shrunk. It's not drastic, luckily, but it is shrinking. Um, where else? My email list has not grown in 2 years. My
Hmm.
YouTube channel, same deal. It grew quickly. I was doing program reviews. It grew quickly. It's not growing anymore. Everything has stopped growing for me. So yes, am I still doing well? Yes, but I will tell you in all honesty, nothing on my end feels like we're moving forward. I feel stuck. So that
And
is
that's
hard. It's
and
hard
that's
to deal with.
such an I appreciate you sharing all that because it contrasts to, again, my view. And I'm not a complete outsider. You and I are friends. We interact, enough for me to kind of and I know these things from you.
Mhm.
And yet on the outside, it's like, wow, he's speaking at big events, right? Again, you and I both spoke at Vigor Summit last year. That's 2024. That's a very prestigious big event, right?
Mhm.
Uh, you spoke at Real Coaches Summit a couple of years ago. I spoke
Mhm.
at the year before.
Yeah.
Again, we were both at the CanFit Pro thing, and you're also doing again these seminars I mentioned with Luca.
Mhm.
And this comes back to, and again, audience. I hope this pulling back the curtains of our industry is really valuable to all you guys, even if you're not fitness professionals, but God, the fitness professionals. I've been ready for Substack. So my first couple Substacks, they are for coaches for career stuff. Now, that's technically out of alignment of what I do as a full-time in-person personal trainer. But guess what? I'm well fed there. My cost of living is actually kind of lower comparatively. It's very stable. My online does quite well. So it lets me do the podcast, which is aligned for the most part, and write as a playground on top of it because I do care about the industry. It's given me a lot of good. So I don't believe your message in any way is don't do things that fulfill you, you enjoy, because most of our peers, most of the industry, higher level coaches, they have aspects of multiple audiences. They do. You can do it. The key here is alignment, right?
Sure.
And your motives. So, but what I am seeing is a lot of status chasing, a lot of craving of that. And especially, and my first two Substacks are on, the second one was on, people are always in my DMs going, hey, are you looking for guests? Could I come on your podcast? And it's like kind of an answer to them, but hey, that doesn't do anywhere near as much for you as you think. And the first Substack, and if anybody wants to read it, DM me, I will send them to you.
Mhm.
People are always, me and Luca this weekend, we're talking about this. He's got Vigor Summit coming up this November. I'll be attending. I can't wait. It's going to be incredible. But anytime we announce a conference, again, another thing I've done in the past that doesn't put business in my, people in my business, people are in our DMs going, hey, do you need a speaker? It's like speaking at these industry conferences does almost nothing for your business directly. Maybe at scale across all these things. Yeah, I do get inquiries from people who really done their homework and on a local basis, me and the other, of course, Dean Somerset is local Edmonton, and we tend to be the two people in Edmonton who have a vastly more outsized uh, presence in the educational side of the fitness industry who are local to Edmonton. So we tend to get the serious people who are researching. We tend to get more inquiries from those people. Sure, at scale, yes, it is valuable, but it's not for each unit of podcast appearing on speaking event. So, but again, these people think that, well, if I just get on the stages and on the podcasts, it's going to make me, and I'm going to get followers, and I'm going to get clients. But it doesn't work that way. You got to have the other stuff on lockdown first. And you're a good example of this. And I'm watching, like I said, here's this guy who's like, wow, he is crushing it on this educational presence, everything he's doing in the industry. And you're here going, all this other stuff is going in the wrong direction. I'm out of alignment. And this is what I wanted to show the world. It's like, and I'll take this a little further. A lot of fitness professionals that I know, and a lot of them are good people, some of them little questionable. They're putting on a show about how well they're doing, right?
Mm.
And I understand from the good people, there's this nervousness and vulnerability looking around. Everybody else is doing great. Social media is put on a show. We all know the highlight, yeah, it's a highlight reel. It's not reality. But far more people than you realize are struggling with this. A lot of the online coaches, because social media is dramatically changing, are struggling to get much by the way of traction or leads through social media. And then another important thing, my social media hasn't grown in a while either. I'm actually at peace with it. In fact, part of this might be narrative about not wanting to do the things to embrace viral based video media. And I'm not interested in that stuff at all. I don't have the time, but I watch and I see. I'll use Dr. Lane Norton and Dr. Mike Isotel as a good example. Now, Dr. Mike, RP Strength, one of my sponsors, they're great. I was just in Columbus with the RP crowd for an event. But the amount of vitriol and nastiness they get. Now, by their own admission, they play that game. They have bombast on their social media, and sure, they can probably invite a lot of this, but I see people who are at that level. Let's look at Jordan Syatt. Jordan Syatt is borderline milk toast in terms of like how he shows up. He doesn't attack anybody. There's no negativity. And he gets nastiness and vitriol all over the place at that kind of million-ish plus follower, very visible, very video based. Everybody, in our world and beyond recognizes all these faces. I don't want that. I have said long, even as I was, intentionally growing my social media, I said, if someone could give me 1 million real engaged followers tomorrow, I would not take it. I wouldn't be interested. It doesn't benefit me in the way that I actually do business. Uh, I think there's people who can leverage it, but I wouldn't want that because I've experienced some goofy stuff. It's been mostly positive, but some goofy stuff, even at 160 plus thousand followers and my level of recognition locally and abroad. I've been with Mike. I've been sitting and eating with him and people walking by recognizing him, total strangers. Um, I've seen what goes on in the online space. My mental health couldn't handle that, and I don't know how people do. One more thing, and I want to, pick your brain on this stuff. Recently, if anybody follows my friend Goop, he outed a couple of people. They're just good examples of what's wrong in the industry. This Malibu Max Fit guy. Some of you guys might like this guy. Ooh, positive vibes, all this stuff. Feel good story. IED goes off in his face. Now, Goob exposed all that. That was a lie. He's been telling this lie for 10 years. The dude fell down drunk, busted up his face, lots of filler. There was no explosion. Stolen valor straight. Okay, the guy is a fraud. He's actually a construct. Media company kind of created him and pushed him. Came out of nowhere. Scotty K Fitness is another one of these guys. And I don't like ragging on people, but these guys have a legacy of falsehoods. Again, Goob has a very detailed. There's another guy, Garrett Runvis, who has a lot of videos exposing, Scotty and his real history, a legal name change, old allegations, etc. And these are a couple of people who've played the social media, viral video media game, jump cuts and all this sort of like stuff. And I don't know them, but seeing their social media immediately, I'm finally tuned to this. I'm like, this is status seeking narcissism. These are not real trainers. They have no legacy of coaching people, working with people in the industry. But there's a disease here, a mental disease. And I don't think it's the caring type of coaches and other people who listen to episodes like this, podcasts like this. But there are a lot of people trying to enter the fitness space that we sort of compete with for eyeballs who are playing these type of games and their integrity is questionable. I'm going to do an episode with Jack Hallows really soon. We're going to go more in depth about this whole social media side of stuff. But I don't want that. Now, anything I just said there, please, your thoughts, share, unpack it.
I mean, I'm in agreement with you. I grew my YouTube channel from doing program reviews. So I would find a program, and some of them were suggestions, but like a big name person, someone like Nick Bear or I did Marcus Philly, did a bunch of I think I did around 50 program reviews, and that's what grew my channel. I think I had right around 10,000 subscribers, and then it grew pretty quick. And obviously, like I said, it's stagnant since then. I didn't love doing program reviews. Because of all the nastiness that would come with it. Now, maybe I should have stuck with that. Maybe I should go back to it. I don't know. But what I do know is that it seems things for me as just a human being, I have trouble with, like, I won't do anything to grow. And I see that people will do anything to grow. I see people that will do anything to sell. I see business coaches that you and I both know that will have an ad up for something unrelated to business. I just saw someone from someone on peptides. There are people out there that will do anything to make money. I am not one of those people. I just can't do it. And maybe if I could, I would be more well off. But it's very, very hard for me to do those things that are not coming from the right place. So I don't do well with that type of stuff. The going after people. There's so much like hatred on YouTube, like reviewing like Dr. Mike's PhD review and geez, like the list just goes on and on and on and on. That's kind of where I find myself not willing to do certain things. I actually signed up. I bought a social media course from Viralish, which maybe some of you guys out there know who they are, and they're great. They do great things, and the course is solid. I paid $1,100 for this course, and I got through some of the material, and I actually even booked a call with one of their coaches. It was $300 a half hour, and the stuff that they want you to do to reach new people is kind of just like lackluster, and it was like leave the hook on screen for the entire reel. And I did a reel where it was literally I put on the reel, this is what the social media coach told me to do. Interestingly enough, that was one of my highest reach reels in a long time. And I'm like, this is proof that you can put out anything that's complete garbage and it will do better than the stuff that I put out is heavy. It is deeper. I will go deeper with the science. I will write a caption that's pretty lengthy. And I'll write it myself and not use AI to write it, which is another thing that we're dealing with. And I still love that. Much like you, I started a Substack channel, and I love going deep. I just wrote an article that's 10 pages long on HRV, an HRV training guide, 10-page, article, and I love doing that stuff. So it's tough to adhere to, it's tough to evolve, I guess, and be okay with the stuff that is just completely lackluster. It's meaningless. Yes, yeah, will you go viral? Maybe. But do you go viral and reach the people that you truly want to reach? That's the question I have. And I think sometimes that could be true. Some people have mastered that. But I guess for me, I'm just not willing. Maybe that's why I'm not growing. Is I'm not willing to do those things. And I truly believe, Andrew, that there is a way to still put out high quality stuff, still reach new people, still reach the right people. I just personally haven't figured it out perfectly. I actually I feel like I've been getting a little bit better the last few weeks, but it's an ongoing process. I'm not a fast learner, so it does take me longer to understand, what people are responding to and what kind of piques the curiosity and gets them to actually, go through a carousel post that's 11, 12 slides long.
A quick sponsor break for my current aspiring coach listeners. This episode is brought to you by Train Heroic. If you know me, you know I only work with sponsors I use personally and where I know the people behind the product. Train Heroic is the best online coaching software in the industry. Not only is it a great platform for one-on-one coaching, it's fantastic for group coaching and selling standalone programs. Train Heroic is used by some of my trusted friends, so I switched my online group program here, and my members love it, raving about its ease of use. Having a dedicated app means far greater reliability for my clients and has been by far my best experience with any online coaching software. Train Heroic is a proven and stable industry leader, meaning it isn't going to suddenly disappear. One of the biggest risks in choosing an online coaching software. When you start a free trial today, you'll get 90 days free to experience why I love and trust this platform. You'll get full support from their team, who've been a joy for me to work with. And I trust Train Heroic and the people behind it. Here's how to activate your free 90-day trial. It's 2 important steps. Number 1, go to www.trainheroic.com/liftfree. Step 2, reply to the email you get. It should be trials@trainheroic.com, and let them know I sent you, or go to the links in the show notes.
You said something earlier, and I think there's more to it than what you realize. The amount of time and skill and effort to actually master social media is astonishing, and it's changing more quickly. So I remember Instagram in its early days, in its inception, before I was even using it, you'd see these people who would blow up huge. They would post the shirtless selfies. A lot of the fitness influencer types, they could get enormous engagement, certainly uh,
Mm.
large followings off of posting selfies. That's it. Anyone who's in early now, a lot of those people, their engagement and their audiences are largely dead. There's a lot of inactive accounts there, but that style of posting dies on the algorithm instantaneously. There's nothing to get, people won't share it, they don't engage in it. So, and unfortunately, some of those people, because they got attached to, emotionally attached to the engagement, they've resorted to paying for engagement, fake likes, fake comments, fake followers, etc. Right? That's a bad path. Don't go down that path. And then I remember in 2017, the infographics craze. Jordan Syatt, Spencer Nadolsky, Sohee Lee really lit up on that. There's a handful of other people. That got they grew huge followings, hundreds of thousands of people within months. That got very ubiquitous, a lot of copycatting, very hard to differentiate on it. And then pretty soon that group, and I followed not too long behind the Twitter graphic post. That actually worked extraordinarily well for a really long time. Now, I think what underpinned all this was, and our generation, the generation that came before us, that we followed, a lot of the T Nation writers we came up through, tremendous authority from having written for all the big publications, having built successful businesses, whether it's John Berardi writing for T Nation and having built Precision Nutrition, it's Christian Thibodeau and his monstrous legacy in the industry. Um, the things that Brett Contreras has built and done, Ben Bruno, Tony Gentilcore, this list goes on. And then that actually worked for a while, but then things shifted. Once TikTok came around, Instagram shifted more to video-based stuff. Short form video took over articles across the internet, and all the publications we've written for, most of them died, major shifts, etc. And then it became the TikTokification of social media. YouTube's algorithms like this, and it shows you it's interest-based algorithms, not who you follow anymore. Dramatic change. So yes, there's a certain set of people who can develop a skill of the hooks, entertainment, etc. But it more or less changed Instagram forever into being more of the TikTok ecosystem. The way people consume is different. The way people are incentivized to create is different. To my point, and what you originally said, I think to stay current on that takes a pretty dedicated skill set that you're constantly nurturing. And I do believe some people can probably pick it up fairly easily, pattern recognize, iterate, adjust, and stay on top of it and not spend too much time. But I think for most people, it's actually a fairly time-consuming thing to learn it from the beginning. Video editing alone.
Mm.
And AI will,
Sure.
of course, change some of this stuff. But I think for a lot of coaches, who coach a lot of people in person, already own existing businesses, this is a lot of work that time that they don't have. And it's fertile ground for the I mean, I've long sort of resisted using the word influencer as a dirty word, but now I kind of do. But this like influencer class, the Scotty K Fitnesses, the Malibu Max types, the incentives are there for them to do this stuff. Ashton Hall is another good example of this stuff. The guy who is this ridiculous morning ritual. You want to dig into the internet, turns out that guy's not so great either.
Mm.
And and I don't think that everybody who does this stuff is low integrity, but boy, it does provide a shortcut for low integrity people to try to capitalize on it. And it's easy for us to sit there and go, oh, boo, old man with a shotgun on the lawn going, Clint Eastwood, get off my lawn, just crotchety and not being willing to pivot with stuff. But that's not what this is. It's recognizing where I don't have the bandwidth or interest to continue to play that game, shift with it, learn, change all the
Mm.
time. I know you don't either. And for everybody listening who's not in the fitness industry, is just recognize that this stuff is all going on. I hope this episode is a really good pull back the curtains on some of the stuff that we navigate, we struggle with. Um, Realize that people are putting on a pretty good show. And I'll be honest, I Hashimoto's energy, what have you. I've had a ton of fulfilling stuff. Business is great. I'm like in a really good position, but I do worry about every launch of my program. So,
Mm.
any parting thoughts?
Same.
Couple of minutes.
Yeah, no, I think to that end, the question for me, and maybe some of you guys listening can apply this, was what is the thing that truly lights me up, which for me is programming, writing programs and getting people great results. But I think my thing isn't a transformation. My thing is how can I add years to your life? Like I can get anyone stronger, I can improve anyone's endurance, more power. That's easy. That stuff's easy. But how do I add years to your life? That's the harder question. So I went back to the drawing board about what do I truly feel best about and how can I best serve the people in my world? Is it just another training program, a PDF, or is it something deeper? And when I asked that question, I had to really look at everything I've done and everything, what that's led to and what are some of the things that have come, the great things, but what are also the things that have been roadblocks for people. And by doing that, I was able to launch a program. We actually launched a new program this past where was it? Geez, I can't even remember now what month we in. It was February. And I know that the industry, like you can go on AI and get anything, right? Um, People don't need another training subscription. People need accountability. People need to be in a community of like-minded people. People need someone to be a voice of reason. People need to see other people struggling with the same things they're struggling with. And of course, they need a great training program. So that is the thing that I launched this past February. That's a program that gives you all of those things, but doesn't force you to have to spend $1,000 a month for one-on-one coaching. It doesn't, um, it doesn't put you in a position where you have to wonder, like, is this enough, or how do I do this? It's something that is going to set you up for success for the rest of your life. And that's, to me, that was the thing that I'm going to do because I know it's the right way, not because I know it's a money play, not because I know it's it's anything else. It was the intentions that are pure, and if I had to truly go deep and ask myself what is it that people need, it's not another PDF training program. It is actual support and accountability. Couple that with all the things that we do, managing stress and doing things that are realistic and sustainable for the rest of your life. Those are the things that I can provide to the world. So that's what I did. I launched a new program and it was stressful just like everything else, but that's something I'm committed to growing in the long term. And, again, asking what is it that I can truly do to serve people? Is it another course? For me, that doesn't truly light me up. So it's got to be something that lights me up, that serves on the highest possible level, but also is in alignment with what I'm about. At the end of the day, Andrew, what I'm about is stress management. All you boil this down to one thing, it's about stress management. Your stress budget is different now than it was when you were 20. So I'm a 43-year-old dad. I teach people how to do these things, and that is what all of my effort and dedication is going towards. I'm doing a dissertation on concurrent training, which is managing multiple qualities of fitness. You need many qualities of fitness to improve the underlying support, which is your autonomic nervous system. That's why part of the reason why I was in this position is just being completely off the rails in terms of stress, mental stress, physical stress, pushing harder, doing at the time I was, doing a carnivore based diet, which is crazy now thinking about it, but you're doing various things and you're trying to move the needle, so to speak. Sometimes you go further, sometimes you go backwards before you go forwards. And I think that is truly a lesson I've learned is that sometimes you have to take a couple steps back to take 3 or 4 steps forward. You're muted.
Whoops. It's
Mm.
great to have you on, my friend. Everybody can follow you at Jason Brown Coaching on Instagram. Let's bump your Instagram a little bit. Obviously, then they can go find your YouTube and other resources from there. Thank you. I hope everybody enjoyed this one. And please, this is sort of a unique episode. If there's coaches in your world, they're struggling, share this with them. Get this one in their hands. This is the one I think that might give them some perspective because I do care about our industry. I care about the coaches who are doing it for the right reasons. And I can't abandon, try to create resources for them, but I also still got to stay true to my core audience. So thank you, my friends, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you for having me, brother. Appreciate it.